Good morning, everyone. I'm Jim Fogler, president of the Florida Press Association. Welcome and thank you for joining us this morning. What a never-ending year this has been. It feels more like 2020. And I know we're all doing things that we never thought we'd be doing, like these virtual presentations, meetings, hence this one, working from home, rethinking how we are doing business today. And in some cases in our media world, this has sped up some of our strategies and our strategic plans. This morning, we're going to hear from two leaders who did just that, and they're going to share what they've done to pivot and leverage opportunities to either launch a new publication or rethink their markets, geographies with readers and advertisers in mind to take a new approach with their publications. But before we begin, I have a few short announcements. First off, I'd like to recognize our sponsors, Blue Toad, Preferred Marketing Solutions, and our very own Intersect Media. Please mark your calendars for our next VIP Roundtable, which is being held on November 12th. This will be the second part of our public notice two-part series, and we're planning to unveil our newly modernized floridapublicnotice.com site. Small reminder, this session is being recorded, and if you have any questions, please feel free to use our chat feature, and I'll get to as many as I can during the panel discussion. And actually, I'm planning on doing that during the discussion, so please feel free to use the chat feature. And now, without further ado, I'll introduce our two guests who will share their stories. First up, we'll be hearing from Emerald Green, owner and publisher of Green Publishing, who recently launched a new weekly publication called Riverbend News in the Greater Suwannee. And then I'll turn it over to Dan Autry, president and publisher of Tampa Bay Newspapers, who's going to share what they've done to reimagine a few of their publications to be more efficient and nimble in the markets they serve. Emerald, first off, inquiring minds want to know, launching a new weekly publication during a pandemic is pretty bold and courageous, but obviously opportunity was knocking. We'd love to hear your story. Take it away.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to start out by saying my platform might be a little bit different than everybody else's. I was born and raised in the newspaper business. It's all I've ever known. My father was already in the newspaper business, so I just grew up in it. And so 13 years ago in 2007, I had branched out and I had bought another publication in one of my bordering counties that was already established twice a week. And I had taken it over 6 months after I bought it. Of course, I said I bought it in July of 2007. 6 months later, 2008 happened, which I'm sure everybody remembers 2008. So we prevailed through that and became stronger because of it. So I'd already lived through one, I don't know what you want to call it, but hell of 2008.
Yeah.
So back in July, and on the other side of Madison County is Suwannee County, Hamilton, and Lafayette. And in business for years has been the Suwannee Democrat, Mayo Free Press, and the Jasper News. And as odd as it is, back when I was growing up, my father had owned the Mayo Free Press for years. So I grew up with my father having 5 newspapers, and the Mayo Free Press was one of them, which we had sold back in 1993. So back in this past July, CNHI has then owned the Suwannee Democrat, Mayo Free Press, and the Jasper News. And July the 9th, I believe, that was their last publication. A couple of days earlier, the CNHI, some of the head folks had walked into the Suwannee Democrat office on a Monday afternoon about 3 o'clock and had said at 5 o'clock today, when y'all clock out, it's your last day. We're closing the newspapers down. So everybody walked out that day without a job. The one person they kept on was the general manager. She was there for another week and a half in order to wrap everything up and to close the whole office down. So news had started getting to me. I had people start calling me and texting me, telling me that the newspaper had shut down. And for those that aren't familiar with the North Florida, so Madison County sits, all 3 of those counties, Suwannee, Hamilton, and Lafayette, border Madison County. We're all connected. So I was also told there was a lot of other newspaper people that had already been contacted also that were looking into the aspect of opening up the newspaper. And my oldest daughter has grown up and has stayed in the newspaper business with me. And I had called her and I said, the Swanee Democrat is closed down. If we want to expand and move on into those counties, we've got to think about it now, make a move now before anybody else does. And I called the general manager. She knew about this is where my model might be a lot different than a lot of people that sit and think a long time before they make a move. But I got there, I knew what their gross income was per se on their advertising and their legals and classifieds. I got me a scrap sheet of paper and I jotted down what they made, how much I knew payroll would cost me there of sorts, how much I would need to stock computers. So it wasn't like we were buying another newspaper. And in one way you win with that, and one way you don't. When you buy another newspaper, you go that $500,000 in debt or $1 million in debt just from buying the newspaper. But without buying the newspaper, you're up that amount, but you have nowhere to station, you have no computers, you have no telephones, you have no internet, and you've got to start completely over. So I had just figured all that in, how much it would take to get a start. I knew it was the pandemic. I know everybody was shutting down on advertising a lot. I had wanted to start a newspaper within 2 weeks. The staff that I was hiring had asked me, could I please give them 3 weeks to get going? So within 3 weeks, we had our first newspaper on the street. And I will say it was, I think what helped in our favor was, in today's world, so many people put down the newspaper because they're building up internet and they're building up social media, and we don't need newspapers because we have social media. But what happens when a newspaper shuts down like that is the whole town went into a truly holy crap, we don't have a newspaper, what are we going to do now? And they truly realized how much the newspaper was delivering to them, more so than what they thought it was. And so a lot of my let's get it out and get in there was while everybody was still in the what are we going to do section of their life, I could jump in and then they would be so happy to have another newspaper back. And so that part played in our favor. But I spent the next 2 weeks from the day that we decided, yes, we're going to do this. I spent the next 2 weeks in those 3 counties, just pounding the streets, just walking around saying, hi, my name's Emerald Green and I'm starting a newspaper. Hi, my name's Emerald and I'm starting a newspaper. And you just walk door to door to door, introducing yourself. It's all about the PR. I made sure I went and visited all the law enforcement, because, we get a lot of our stories from the law enforcement area, especially in the local news. And I just went door to door. I met all the businessmen. I met all the people I knew would be the big advertisers and that were the big advertisers for the Swanee Democrat. And we just put our first newspaper out. And I will say it was so widely loved. And the way that we do, and I say we, my daughter and I, that we try to structure our newspapers in Madison County and Jefferson County is that it is just all local news. And we had so many people calling us and subscribing, especially once our first newspaper hit the street. They were calling us and saying their whole thing was, I want to subscribe. I just read more in one issue of your newspaper than I could read in 6 months of the old newspaper, sort of thing. And that's been our biggest help. And people are still calling saying, we want to subscribe to your paper. So we've been on the streets now, I think July, August, September, 3 months. We're sitting right at 3 months. Our circulation is up to 2,000. And I must say that started off from like 0 when we started, because we had no database whatsoever. So we've got about, sorry, forgot to turn that to mute. We've got about 1,000 subscribers, and the other 1,000 is what's on the street right now and delivering to all 3 counties. And we're still continually growing. We've had to start completely over with all of our inserts. Of course, when the Swanee Democrat went out of business, they had contacted Walmart and all of their inserts to say, don't deliver them anymore. So now we're having to start back over to call everybody to try to get them back in. We don't have everyone back in yet. So I'm still hoping for that, especially by Christmas time, to be, a good revenue that we'll get in. We've had to start back over with Dollar General, Family Dollar, Walmart to even get our papers back in the stores. So it truly has been a start from scratch, but it's being very widely loved, and people are calling us to subscribe and to be a part of it. And that's my story.
And it's a great
It
one.
just, it really comes down to, and I guess what did it was, and as I sat, do we, don't we, and you've got to weigh it out, but you've got to weigh it out fast. In the situation I was in at the moment, we had to weigh it out fast. And I guess I just grew up in the business. I knew what it took to put a paper out. I know what it takes, and it takes the 110%, and you just got to get up and do it. And it's when you grow old, you don't want to sit back and wonder, shouldn't I? You just, it takes, you got to get out and take the leap of faith.
Well, thank you, Emerald. What a great story. And I would love at this point to open it up for any questions. And I don't see any in the chat, but I guess I'll start off by saying, what do you feel was your biggest challenge? And then how did you overcome that? To the folks that are, sitting on this call and thinking about, hey, maybe I should think about opening up my own or a new publication. What do you feel was your biggest challenge?
I guess the biggest challenge is just to get your name out there. I mean, you've got to let people know that you're there, and that's to advertisers and subscribers. Because even with a newspaper that's already established, that's to get the subscribers to either come on or stay, either way. To me, with my other two newspapers that are already established, is part of my still biggest, my biggest thing. I can sell, it seems like I can sell ads better and faster than I can keep the subscribers or get new subscribers, just because of you're trying to appease to the young people, because usually your older generation are the ones that are there. So you're trying to appease to everybody to keep all generations interested in the newspaper. And I think that comes with, and I've thought about it even with the way that I walked the streets for weeks and weeks
Yeah.
over in those three counties. And I really think that's what it even takes. And I need to start walking the streets again in my two other counties. Is still just walk the streets, knock on the doors, and just try to still get people interested in the newspaper product that you have, that you might have had for 50 years, in my case, or 13 years for my other newspaper. Is still just to interact. It's the PR behind it all. You just can't expect people to come to you. You've got to go out and meet people.
Cool.
Emerald, that's what I was that came to mind when you were telling your story. Would you say that part of your business model is kind of a back to basics, always remembering to kind of go back to the basics of what it's like when launching this new paper, whether it was 13 years ago or today? Do you feel like going back to the basics is kind of a critical part of your model?
I think so. And I really think in the past few months, few weeks, when I'm comparing this new newspaper to what I've already got established in Madison and Jefferson. And that is a lot of it, because I got out and I met a lot of new people. So of course I was born and raised in Madison County, and everybody knows the people, and we're all in small counties. You consider the fact that you know everybody anyway, and you know who their mama is and their next door neighbor and their sister and their aunt. You went to school with their cousin, sort of thing. So, but a lot of people are always moving in, so they don't know you. And 13 years ago, when I bought the Jefferson County, that's what I did. I walked the streets, I beat them, I met people, that I didn't know. And I think that, and I've thought about that, I think we need to do more of that, even in the newspapers that we've had for a long time, just to get the interest back, because not as much as we'd like to think everybody reads the newspaper, they don't. And that's what my biggest struggle right now in my newspapers is, keeping my subscription base up. And I think that's going to be a deciding factor. If I get back out and start beating the streets again, meeting more people.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, Emerald. It's about that community connection, right? And those relationships are so important today. And you mentioned as you were pounding the pavement and out in the streets, you know, that community was worried about not having a news and information source. So, you know, hats off to the team getting that done.
And that is while I was introducing myself and saying we're starting another newspaper. So many people said, "Oh my gosh, you know, I've been missing it. How do I subscribe?" And I was picking up subscriptions in those 2 weeks before I even had a newspaper out on the street. They were already asking for our address, how much the subscription was going to cost, and everything else. Or, you know, my mama, you know, had a subscription. I need to buy me one for me and my mama. So, I mean, I was selling subscriptions before the newspaper even started. So, and I think maybe we do need to get back to the basics of what we used to do 30 years ago, you know, beating the street and meeting everybody instead of sitting behind a desk on a computer. I mean, honestly. So,
Yeah. Emerald, I'm going to go to the chat because we do have a question from someone. And it says, what does the startup newspaper's digital footprint look like?
so I'm probably, sadly, not into the digital side as much as a lot of other newspapers might be, but we did start our website. We started the EPUB. When we started the newspaper, we did offer EPUBs at the same exact time. So you can buy a subscription, an EPUB, or both together for a combined price. And then our websites, we put some of our stories up. We don't put them all up because then you wouldn't need to buy a subscription. I haven't started a paywall on any of my newspaper websites. I'm still deciding if I need a paywall or not. And I'd love to talk to other newspapers to see what they do and how they feel about paywalls, read the first 5 lines and then buy a subscription. But we do just have a website with a few and the EPUB, which is a paid subscription. And we have Facebook. And mostly on our Facebook, we put teasers about, hey, you know, the 4-H went to state here, and then we show teasers of our pages that are like kind of blurred out. You can't read the words. Make sure to buy this Wednesday paper. That's our social media. So, and we sell ads for our website. I don't have any paid ads on my new newspaper website as of yet, but we do that. And we have newsletters that go out.
Got it. Thank you for sharing. Another question. It sounds like local readers understand that general social media is not necessarily vetted and fact-checked news reporting using reliable sources. Is that correct?
Repeat that.
Rosalie, feel free to open up your line. I think it'd be great if you can ask the question.
Hi, Emerald. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
You mentioned social media at the beginning of your talk, and it sounds like your reader and your geographic area understands that social media is not necessarily news, meaning that social media in general as a mass communication tool used by non-professionals is not necessarily fact-checked, vetted, reliable sources were not involved. And there's no boss who will fire you because you're putting out a story that may not be a fact, presented as a fact. Nobody will fire you. And that normally would reflect on the reputation of the publication. So I know it's kind of a long way of asking a simple question, which is going back to your original statement about social media. It sounds like they understand they're not necessarily getting factual news from social media. Is that correct?
Yeah. I'm not sure exactly. I mean, I think a lot of that depends on your age that you know are dealing with, because to me a lot of I don't do a lot of Facebook besides checking like my newspaper, you know, and checking everything that's happening on them. I personally don't read any anything that is not shared from a newspaper or a television station or radio, something that's what I consider reliable. I don't read all of that other stuff, but I do know when that newspaper left Suwannee, Hamilton, Lafayette County for those 3 weeks, the 3 counties really totally just like it was, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? We don't have a newspaper. And then when we came in, they were so excited to have a newspaper back because they didn't have it. And a lot of that, I believe, is what the majority was older generations, but it was people my age. I'm 50. It was my age and even some younger that were still so excited to have the newspaper back, to have the pictures in the newspaper of their kids at homecoming, or in their Halloween costumes. So it really was missed, for those 3 weeks that it was out.
Thank you.
I don't know if that really answered the question or
No,
not.
it helped a lot. Thank you. No, it really did.
Mm-hmm.
Emerald, got a question on structure, staffing. What is currently your structure and what are their roles?
So I was the lady that was serving as general manager for the CNHI for the Suwannee Democrat already. She was the one that I originally went over to speak with to say, what was your revenue? We sat and discussed in detail, why she thought CNHI had closed the business up and what she thought she could bring to it. And she agreed to come back on board with me, and she still serves as my general manager for the Riverbend News. And we of course, we changed the name because we didn't buy them. They had it structured to where one newspaper was for all 3. They did a press run it was called the Suwannee Democrat, and they did their press run for how many subscribers they had in Suwannee County. And then they would stop the press. They would change page 1 and jump page, and then they would start the press again, and it was called the Jasper News. They would stop the press. They changed plates 1 and jump page, and it was called the Mayo Free Press. So, but the other 18 pages were the same exact news. So we made the decision, instead of doing that, we made the name Riverbend News because the Suwannee River runs through all 3 counties, and that's, what everybody does in those 3 counties. You go down the Suwannee. So it's called Riverbend News. We don't stop the press and restart it. It's just one press run for all 3 counties. And we make sure that the front page and everything inside is equally devoted to all 3. So with that, the general manager decided, she came on board with us. The same lady that did the layout, she came on board. The difference was their ads were originally built in Valdosta because Valdosta built all ads for all of their newspapers in that general area. But my graphics designer, she started building ads and laying out the paper. And one other lady that was with the Suwannee Democrat had the circulations, but she also sold ads on the side, and the general manager sells ads. I had a friend that he's actually a minister, but he used to also work for me as a reporter. And he was, because of the pandemic and the churches shutting down, slowing down, he had spare time and had already told me he was thinking about a part-time job while his church wasn't having Sunday night and Wednesday night and everything else. So I had contacted him, and he came on with me as a part-time writer. And up until 2 weeks ago, so almost 3 months, I've been putting out 20 to 24 pages every week with a part-time writer, with Chelsea and I also covering football stories at nighttime and things like that. Because we hadn't had 2 other reporters. In the last 2 weeks, I have hired 2 full-time reporters. So I have 2.5 reporters. I have 1 graphic lady that builds the ads and layouts. I do have a lady that's coming in part-time that builds ads if we need her. And I have 1 full-time advertiser, and my general manager sells advertising on the side. And the circulation lady who also sells ads like Happy 4th of July sort of ads, the signature pages.
Yeah.
So it's still a skeleton staff, and I will say I run a skeleton staff in all of my businesses. Everybody does everything. And if you run out of something to do, we'll hand you a sack of quarters out of the rack machines to sit and roll. But
Emerald, thanks for sharing. Omar, if you're on the line, would you mind just opening up your mic and sharing an idea with Emerald?
First and foremost, Emerald, kudos to you and your daughter. Your courage is admirable. The fact that you are starting a new publication, or a fairly new publication, new to you, new to most, it's amazing during these times while everyone is looking to kind of just pull back and question what we do. The fact that you are venturing on, that's commendable. So congratulations to you and your daughter and the entire staff at your publication. You had mentioned not putting all your articles or all the news that is fit to print on your website, just to make sure that you keep folks interested in perhaps subscribing to the publication. And you wanted to know kind of maybe some ideas that you could implement. And I just thought perhaps have some sort of hybrid, since you are your circulation is not that high and you want to grow it. It is great that you have no paywalls in the system right now, but perhaps look at key stories, putting everything on your website. And those key stories, you need to, whether you put a paywall just for those stories or look to put, a set number of stories that they could read. So that way, the online visitors could be able to see all your stories. And some of those stories are going to pique their interest, but they won't have access unless they're a subscriber. So that way you're kind of featuring all your content, but only those that subscribe can be able to get those content pages or those stories that you deem more important.
thank you.
Sure,
Yes.
Beth.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Omar. Appreciate you sharing that idea.
And I would like to say, because something he said reminded me something I was going to say, but I had forgotten. So during the times, and I do like to brag, and I've said it in different the Zoom that I was a speaker at, some of our roundtables, was back in March when it all first happened. And what I think is important to every publication, whether it's the print newspaper or online publications or whatever you're doing. But back in March, we called staff meetings with my two newspapers, back then in March and April. And I said, I don't know how many of y'all remember 2008, but if you didn't live through it, let me tell you. So, and because in 2008, I was actually having to lay people off, out of my newspaper businesses. And I mean, I hated to do it, but that's what it had come to, especially in the one I had just bought and started. So I said, unless we start laying people off, we've got to come together. And I will say that my staffs in both of my buildings at the time really came together. And we came up with some of the most collective, neat, new ideas on how to sell advertising. Because of course, as everyone knows, you couldn't sell advertising to the restaurants or the boutiques downtown because everybody was closed. But we came up with ways of getting people that we usually don't ask for advertising to sponsor different sort of pages. We came up with new ways to come up with revenue ideas, and we had just pushed different avenues. And I think, like what Karen and I were talking about earlier, it's the coming back to basics. I think sometimes we sit back and we just run with what we normally do, and you don't try to start thinking outside the box. And I think that is a big rut with a lot of us, because we just run on autopilot. And I think what happened with us was we really sat back and we thought, okay, we've really got to be creative. And I've noticed that even since then, we've kept being more creative to come up with it. So we never closed our doors in any of my businesses. And we either broke even, we came out on top each month, which might have only been $100 or $600 or $1,200, but we still came out on top. And if we lost anything, it was only by a few $100s. But I did not lose a lot of money like a lot of other businesses unfortunately did from month to month because of our creativity. Yeah. And I think that does come back to getting back to the basics and really pounding the streets and not running on autopilot.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Emerald, for sharing. And I'm going to speak for everybody on this call. Congratulations, hats off to you and for what you and your team and family have done. Just what an amazing story. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
All right. We're going to move on over to Dan. And we'd love to hear your thinking and strategies around some of the recent shifting in your publications throughout your markets. Dan, take it away.
Thank you, sir. And first, I'm going to say to Emerald's, one of the highlight points is our ability, and I think it's one of the strengths of Weeklies, reacting fast. Yeah. We don't do 6 months of planning meetings. We've done stuff in a week, and that's our strength, and that just shows it to a T. So I agree with you. And the other side of that is, you know, I all of us are paper, ink people with some digital. I hate to see a paper close, any paper, even competitors. But if a competitor closed, you got to look at the opportunity. So that was like too huge, and I'm very impressed. I'm going to kind of touch, and I apologize. I'll probably be redundant to what most of you have done and have been doing over the last 6 months. But I want to touch on what we did from an expense side, and then what we're doing, which can't be, that's short term. It's got to be revenue driven, and exactly what Emerald. Like many people, we were slammed. This came up fast in March, but we reacted fast. Again, getting back to our ability to react fast. TBN, SEN, we have 9 weeklies, and this is pre-vid, 9 weeklies with 215,000 a week circulation. We had 5 monthlies with another 100,000 combined circulation. So obviously our expense side was pretty significant. When this immediately upon when we saw this, the revenues were going to be a challenge, sat down, number one, like all of you, we review, and we're continuing to review and study every expense line that we have, every one, no matter how small, how big. Our first thing was, of course, staffing. We knew our page counts were going to go way down, and content was going to go down. But we sat down with our management team and said, you identify the top people, the criticals, the people who, and one of being a critical is how many jobs can that person do? You know, in production, can this guy do page production, ad production, as opposed to just maybe a spec artist? We went pretty quickly. We were killed in April and June. March and April. Since June, we've been back to profitability. We went from 48 staff full-time. I got a lot of independents, but 48 full-time to 28. 28 people. A lot of that was across the board, i.e. receptionist. Our doors are still locked, that position. We'll get back to, out of that 48, 7 of those positions will be permanently, I hate to say it, you know, you depend on your managers to tell you what people are doing. You know, when people are gone and you're kind of saying, what did they do? It made some of those decisions easy. I mean, some of it was just natural cleanup. But we have 8 positions. We brought 4 back, and 8 positions are budgeted for 2021, and we'll bring them back as we do that. So staffing was obviously an immediate. I kept the however many people are furloughed, I kept them on health insurance until September, end of September. Nobody thought, I didn't think it was going to last this long, but you know, we did 6 months, and then I think that was fair as we could be. They all understood. That was the nice part. People understood it. So anyway, staffing was a significant cut with us. Circulation, we went from about 215 on the weekly side down. We're about 190. One of that obviously was easy cuts. Stores were closed, and so the commercial bulk was eliminated. We're all free distribution. We also took advantage of this and have done so over to identify we go from Hernando down to the southern tip of Pinellas, and we identified zip codes, home delivery zip codes. We sat down and actually, again, it's almost things we probably should have been doing. And we've identified zip codes, and most of it is bulk, but some we have eliminated some home delivery. Actually, I will tell you, our distribution team is probably as good as it's been in years. Because I know a lot, especially on the daily side, are having really hard time maintaining distribution contractors. So we did savings in obviously in circulation and delivery costs. Initially we zoned our 5 Pinellas weeklies to 1 paper, and our 4 Suncoast weeklies into 1 paper. We have since, probably, I want to think starting in June, we've got in Pinellas, we've got 2 zones now. You know, we call them Tampa Bay newspapers, north and south, instead of the individual names. It allows us to pricing point. It's a lot easier to price the split than 1 run. So we've done that. That's actually worked out good. Readers have certainly understood, but you know, touching on what Emerald's done in providing to her new customers, it's quality of content. You know, we did not scrimp on quality content. That's critical to the weekly organization. So there's been understanding. So we did the combination of zones. We've expanded that. I'm not sure when we will go back. I thought we would have been back by now, but I'm kind of concerned for the next 2 months. But I think you know we're heading back in the right direction. I touched on the expenses. We've renegotiated or looked at every expense line. So that's kind of what we've done. Every expense cut, you know, I have what I call the integrity line. If the integrity, if the cut creates an integrity issue, then most likely you're not going to do it. You know, i.e. our reduction in circulation. We actually didn't cut circulation until we fulfilled our commitments to our our insert advertisers. You know, if we had a full run in Suncoast, I didn't cut it until we redid the numbers, and that's what they were sending us. So, I mean, to me, it's all tied. Integrity cuts are essential. You don't do things that are going to come back. Number one, it's just not the way I operate. And number two, that's the way it was. A lot of these things we're going to continue until, you know, I don't see a total return to normalcy. Some of these things worked. They were just smart things to do. We've done them, and we're quite happy to continue them. Staffing and editorial, we've the editorial full-time reporters that we had to furlough, as long as they were on insurance, we couldn't accept content from them. But now they're independent contractors, and we're getting a lot of freelance. So our freelance budget's actually expanded. You got to have content. So that's where we've gone there. Revenue side, you know, on top of our weeklies, our monthlies, and we have, like a lot of folks, we have a huge special section package. And I'm fortunate to have probably one of the best. No, I better not say it because somebody will try hiring. Never mind. But we had, so that was a big focus on what we maintained. And basically what we did, there were special sections. We said, no, this one has no relevance right now. But we replaced it with sections, and we looked at opportunities. I got a feeling probably everybody, you know, we did a special section, and we're still doing share pages with restaurants, home delivery. That's still big. We did a whole section on back when, I think June, when we opened up. So we're looking at the opportunities. We just did our welcome back annual. Surprisingly, it did really well. We kind of, instead of putting it welcome back Canadians, which we don't see any around here right now, we said welcome back to locals, welcome back, you know. And so you just, it's like everything else, you look to make it fit the opportunities you had. like, again, we postponed a lot of those. We're producing a lot of share pages that for non-traditional advertisers that have worked real well. You target it. I don't know, as far as your health industry obviously has been pretty good. Real estate, fortunately, we were just talking about that early, as maintained. So we've targeted that, and that has helped produce quite a bit. I will tell all of you, I don't care what size you are, if they haven't reached out to you yet, reach out to regional and large advertisers. They are looking at weeklies. We just got a large home business, bought a hell of a package. I mean, we're printing the flyers for them, and it's a national company. So there is an interest in weekly pubs right now, and I would take advantage of it. Unfortunately, the daily circulations have been challenging. So we did that. On the digital side, that is one area that we have seen tremendous growth. We are working with our parent company on some programs that they have. So that's one side, that's an advantage to the larger company. So, you got to look for revenue opportunities, and i.e. launching the new papers. We actually have, I can't react quite as fast on it as Emerald did, but we have new opportunities that we will be progressing with as soon as we get some balance and not worried about another shutdown. So there's a lot of opportunities out there, and it can be from different publications. Where we've had so much weekly, we hadn't looked to add weekly. We've been adding monthlies that I want to say they connect to our existing. So initially we can use existing staff, sales, editorial to launch it as revenue justifies, which is, I'm telling you, for all of them has been in the first week to month. We've been able to add sales and editorial staff to all of them. So growth opportunity right now, I think, obviously is a niche public, whatever you want to call it. But our monthlies, unlike their community newspapers, but there's probably a significant more focus on feature content and more magazine feel. But we're going to areas, same as Emerald, that don't have coverage. The daily numbers have either fallen off the rocks. There's still a lot of people that want local content. And so, like I said, I don't think I probably have said anything different than most of you folks have had to do. It's just reacting fast, which is a huge, and looking for opportunities. I don't want to see papers go away, but if they go away, you got to look to take that void, especially if you can add it on to your existing. Now, I've never had an opportunity where I've been able to hire the entire staff of a Florida paper. That's awesome, or most of them. So anyway, that's where we're keeping our nose above water. This is my 41st year. I'm probably looking to retire next year. I was scared this was going to be my first year of being in the red in my 41 years, but we've averted that. So I can go out on a high note. Anyway, that's pretty much it for what we've done. And I hope, individually, if you want to contact, please do. But again, I don't think it's anything that any one of you folks haven't thought about or acted on. So,
Dan, thank you for sharing, and I'd love to open it up for any questions that are on the line. I don't see any in the chat, but as we wait for questions to funnel in, I think you're right. I mean, emerging categories of business. Home improvement with the pandemic and folks staying home, they're looking around their house and they got a lot of projects going on, whether it's it's in their backyard or in their house, and we're seeing that as a growth opportunity, and we've heard that before. So thank you for sharing that.
Jim, one thing I want to say on the digital side,
yes.
We with the compressed zones, we put our e-editions back on our websites.
Okay.
But we eliminated our e-editions 3 years ago. And instead of the e-editions, we just made sure to put all of our content online. our traffic increased 40-something% in the first month by content, by having the initial content and not the additions.
Wow.
So that was interesting. So.
We have a question from Emily Walsh. We're going to ask her to open up her mic and jump in the pool.
Hi, Dan.
I am.
And Dan's right. He's the best for calling for advice. I always love chatting with Dan. But I have a question. So I know you're a subsidiary of the Tampa Bay Times,
Right.
but with them going to, and I know they're still daily with their e-newspapers, but having only 2 print editions. And I don't know if you guys all saw the story about the Salt Lake City Tribune going from a daily to a weekly publication.
Yep.
As weekly newspapers, does that make you nervous about how, possibly the dailies will start turning into weeklies and directly competing with us? I have my own opinion, but I'm curious about yours.
That subject has definitely been discussed here. Yes, just to put it in a nutshell, it's comparable numbers. Will we have comparable rates? Will we be a competitor? That is an absolute. Obviously, I can't go in too much, but I think we're looking at how we can make it work as a partnership and not as a competitor. But you are absolutely right. That subject came up very quickly. And yeah, I think it's a legitimate concern.
Great question. Great question. Dan, we got another question in the chat. Do you carry any monthly columns by specialized or contributing writers, such as nutrition news or science news, on how masking flattens the population curve?
The only regular weekly columnists are on opinion page. Everything, I would say, I can't say everything, but everything off the opinion page and most of the stuff on our single opinion page, which are dangerous in this world right now, are locally produced content. And one of the gentlemen, Bob Driver, he was, he's a local tradition or hero here. He was with the Clearwater Daily 30, 40 years ago, and we've just kept him on. I'm starting to think he's probably repeated his columns over the last 30 years, but I'm not keeping track. But outside of that, we are locally produced, and especially right now. We have in Pinellas, our 5 papers, mostly on the beaches, cover 26, 27 municipalities. We don't need anything outside, and once you open that door, we found that especially on the local level, the attorneys, there's doctors that want, hey, I'll provide you a column. And if you take one, then you got, hey, how come I can't have mine in? And so no, we're local, and that's the way I'll die. So
there you go. All right. Anybody else? Dan, other folks that are looking to maybe rethink their zoning, and you mentioned you went now north, south, and what type of communication, or how do you, what was the thinking behind letting your readers know? You mentioned that based on the pandemic and the situation, readers were more receptive to understanding. But how do you get that message out, and what type of messaging did you use?
Initially, of course, everything we published it was on our websites, but I did a column immediately.
Okay.
We put it and I'm not a big one on publisher columns on front page. They belong on opinion page, but it was just, I don't know how to say it as much as I can. It was a heartfelt, statement to our loyal readers.
Yeah.
And I got some responses back. Quite honestly, made me cry in a good way.
Yeah.
It's just, none of us have been through this before. So it's like anything else in the content we do. We try to be upfront, always glass house. And I just was very fun, and I answered phone and I answer emails, and And it's like Emerald said, you got to get on the street. And I got a few too many streets here to get out on, but I you know, you got to be accessible and you got to respond. You got to respond quick. It's like getting that call from that guy that wants to shoot me because if I throw another piece of trash in his yard again, you know?
Yeah.
All right, whatever, buddy. But
You know, listening to you and Emerald talk, you know, being authentic, transparent, and immediate, right? Moving quickly and swiftly is really key. And anyway, appreciate
absolutely.
all your suggestions and your story. You know, I'm gonna throw a question back out to Emerald and Dan, but I'll first start out with Emerald. So Emerald, what's next?
I don't need another paper if that's what you mean. But as far as that, I mean, we also have our magazine. We produce a magazine once a quarter. So I'm still trying to expand that. And now that I've got 3 extra counties, I see that, I mean, I can start expanding into those counties more so than I was. We were just distributing some into those 3 counties already because our magazine covered some of those counties with some of our spotlight stories. Our magazine is really like a community newspaper with the farmer. You know, one month we'd have the farmer from Jefferson County, the teacher from Madison County, you know, the businessman from Taylor County. So I can expand more into those 3 counties and hopefully grow the magazine. And we're going to, if I outgrow, in this new newspaper for Riverbend News, we print 20 to 24 pages a week so far on it. And if I outgrow that, I'm going to let the pandemic go away for a while. If I outgrow that, then I'll go twice a week on that, like I do in my other counties. And we're going to start our newsletter over there. So as far as expanding right now, my newsletter and my magazine is where we're going to go with that. And if I outgrow once a week, I'll go twice a week, but that's to wait to be seen.
Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome. Dan, back at you. What's next?
It's kind of like I said, on the expense side, we will move appropriately as the opportunities arise. If you know, we can, you know, zone or our zones get back, we'll need to bring back some editorial support. We've brought back 2-3 editorial. You know, we got some room to expand ours, but you know, obviously press runs, expense control stuff that doesn't affect the integrity of the operation, we will maintain that. Like the other side, we've already got, you know, as soon, you know, I don't want to say as soon, but as we get some normalcy, we've got expansion plans. And, you know, the model, you know, I think Foyle will appreciate this, you know, 15 years ago, we used to get a lot from a little, you know, that model, and I've had that discussion here, we get a little from a lot. And that's why the expansion and the opportunities, you know, if your margin's here, then you need more, you know, you need more of those. So we're growth. I mean, we have to be growth, but we got to be smart on the content and quality of content, local content. They're not getting it anywhere else. To the point of the digital question that Emerald had, you know, there's really no, even in this county, I mean, there's a few. Patch has actually done a halfway decent job. But other than that, there's no local content. I mean, they're not getting it. So that's expand, save and expand. How's that?
Yeah, there you go. Save, expand,
And
local.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no,
I was going to just expand on that with, I mean, everyone listening. I mean, because we're all weeklies and stuff, but it really is like what the weeklies have above the dailies is that the daily newspapers are failing / dying because everything that they put in their newspaper, you can find on the internet. And what the weeklies should be having in our newspaper, you should not be able to find on the internet, because you can find out about the fires in California on the internet. You can find out what's happening in Iran and Iraq on the internet, but you can't find out which churches are holding homecoming next week, you know, or who just celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary or turned 100 years old. And that's what the weekly newspapers need to be delivering. And that's what keeps people buying them, because
Yep.
their kid's name is in the newspaper for honor roll or for being a brownie scout,
Yeah.
sort of thing. So, and that's what we've got to capitalize on in order to stay alive.
And
Amen.
one thing, it's absolutely the truth. One thing even in the worst of times, there's positives. And I just, like I said, what I'm going out, my team, God almighty, I said, I had put up a big quote on the wall, and in days like this, crap sinks and cream floats. And I couldn't be more proud of my team across the board. Everybody has stepped up, and it's just been, so there are positives. We just got to, focus on what we can in a positive way. But anyway.
No doubt. And we will leave on the note of, local is the franchise, right? So that's loud and clear. So, hey, special thank you again to both Emerald and Dan and our sponsors,
Thank
Blue
you.
Toad, Preferred Marketing Solutions, and Intersect Media. Hope you found value in our session. We always look for hearing feedback from our members. So please send any suggestions to myself or Karen Cowers for our next VIP roundtables. Speaking of that, we look forward to seeing you on November 12th for our next VIP roundtable session. It's going to be at 2 p.m. and it's going to be on unveiling our modernized FloridaPublicNotice.com site. Thank you again for joining us, and have a great rest of the day, everybody.